Okay, I make it 6 o'clock, although the clock here says 5 to 6. It is 6, is it? Lovely, thank you. Welcome to tonight's Planning Committee on Thursday the 27th of April. Welcome to all councillors. Before I start, can I say that this is my last meeting as Chair of the Planning Committee. Some people opposite will probably be jumping up and down with joy. Some others may be a bit sad. And also Councillor Jeff James, who's been on, I've been serving for 24 years, and I know Jeff's been doing a lot longer. And it'll be a sad day, Jeff, when you step down as well, because of your knowledge in planning. Right, just to go on agenda item 1, we've got apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chairman, we have had an apology from Andrew Parker.
No, he's here.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor. I didn't see you there. Sorry. Okay, just for the visits. Thank you.
Yes, he fooled me when he walked in, but never mind. Okay, can I sign off the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes.
Are you happy for me to do so? Thank you. Could we receive any declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct? This is for members and officers, and now's your opportunity to declare those interests. Councillor Liz Burnett.
Thank you. I have a personal and prejudicial interest in agenda item 10, application number 2016/01330/RG3 as Cabinet Member for Regeneration. I have permission to speak, but I will then be leaving the chamber.
Next is Councillor Parker.
Oh.
Yeah, he beat you to it.
Yeah. Chairman, yes, on 2016/01390 Cotterell Lodge, 2016/01394 listed building consent Cotterell Lodge, and 2017/0086 Tresillian Wood. I have acted for those before, so I will leave the room.
Hardly worth you being here. Councillor James.
Agenda item 7.2, and there's a reference to, on page 23, B, 16 Kyrect. My sister and brother-in-law live next door, so I'll declare an interest in that.
Thank you. And I know our legal officer, Mr. Richard Price, would like to declare an interest.
Yes, personal interest in 2017/00086. I know the applicants.
Okay. Are there any more? No? All those declarations are in. Thank you very much. Under the report of the Managing Director on agenda item 4, these are the site inspections. I'm going to ask the Chief Planning Officer if there is anything to add. Marcus Goldsworthy.
Nothing to add, Chair.
There you are. Nothing to add. Move, we note.
Yeah.
Thank you. Reports to the Head of Regeneration and Planning under agenda item 5, which you can find on page 1, the building and regulation applications other than building control matters determined by the Head of Regeneration and Planning under his delegated powers. Is there anything to add, Marcus?
Nothing to add.
There you are. Nothing to add. Move, we note. Thank you. Agenda item 6, planning applications determined by the Head of Regeneration and Planning under their delegated powers, found on page 13. Anything to add, Marcus?
Nothing to add.
They are. Move, we note. Thank you. 7, appeals. That's found on page 23. This is the year-end report. Anything to add to that, Marcus?
Thank you, Chair. There is nothing, obviously, in respect of the appeals lodged. One key appeal which will be of interest to the committee, obviously we've been back and forth a number of times, is Letton's House, which obviously went to, I think it's the first appeal, but obviously a number of applications before that. Members will note that at the appeal, although the council put its case strongly, the appeal was allowed and the condition removed. There was, although the report doesn't say it, there was also a costs application, and the costs application was dismissed. So obviously just for members to note, that decision has been taken. And then the other thing for members to note is the final statistics, of which is 58% of all appeals were dismissed and 42% allowed. That has been skewed slightly by members will remember the one site in Mickleston the Pit where it was one site where we had 7 appeals on one issue, and that has unfortunately skewed that figure for this year because there aren't a huge number of appeals, and that number of appeals will significantly affect the percentages.
Okay. Members happy? Councillor Hartree.
I'd just like to say in reference to Letton's House, I'm so pleased that common sense has ruled at last. I'm particularly pleased that the inspector didn't consider it necessary for the appellant to make a sizable contribution towards affordable housing. There we are, and that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I think the inspector did say the council was right and justified in its stance that he took. From my point of view, I think it was justified the way the committee acted. I don't know whether Marcus wants to add anything to that.
The inspector did make a comment in the costs application to that effect, that although they hadn't agreed with the decision of the council, they felt there was no issue in respect of the decision that had been taken, and obviously that's the reason that the costs application wasn't upheld against the council.
Very well. Thank you. Okay. Any other member happy with that? Thank you. We've got agenda item 8, which is trees, the little eye on the delegated list.
Wait till Jeff comes back in.
Sorry. Yeah, we haven't got Jeff, have we? Thank you, Councillor James. We're just moving on to trees, Jeff, with the little eye, the delegated list on page 28, and I think one member wants to raise an issue on that list.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand it, this matter has been delegated, but I would like to just air the issue of the proposal to lop or fell the Robina tree in West House, Stanwell Road. Now, from what I understand, there's huge issues in parts of the Vale regarding the felling of trees, and from what I understand, the tree's okay. It's just there's defective drainage. Now, if that's the case, I would have thought the priority should have been to repair the drains rather than chop a tree down. But I'd like to hear if there's more to it than that. Thank you.
I suggest the member looks at the report that will be online which deals with that matter and explains the background to it. If there are any further questions following that, I suggest they write in and that those questions will be answered.
But this is an agenda item before us tonight, and although hope springs eternal, we might not be here in the future. So really, I think committee should have it explained to us why problems with drains are resulting in a fine tree being chopped down.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know about the condition of those drains. I know it from previous experience that when trees affect walls and you end up knocking them down, you don't rebuild the wall, because if you do, the tree will still cause damage. It's the same with drains. They undermine the drains. So, because trees keep growing, believe it or not, but I think Marcus was itching to come back in.
Peter wants to come in and...
Yeah. Who am I taking first? Peter?
All I was going to say is this is a report for noting, so there is no decision to be taken on it. So if there's any, that decision has been taken by the operational manager under their delegated powers. So if there are any concerns, they should write in, and it actually says at the top of the report, if you notice, members have any queries on these applications, please consult the department. So please use that, by all means contact us and we'll explain the situation.
I understand that, Chair, but quite honestly, we don't have a tremendous amount of time to chase things once we get the papers, and there are other things going on. So I'm not sure really if that little sentence at the top stops any discussion or any information being supplied at committee.
Can I just say, we have these papers 7 days in advance, so they were out last Thursday, and you have got an email supplied by the council. It only takes seconds for you to get that to the officer, and you would have had a reply back. But I will take Peter King, and then I'll go to Bronwyn. Will you turn your mic off, please, Chris?
If I may, through you, Chair, help my colleague. I did phone up, I did ask, and I was told that the tree roots are causing heave and disruption to the drains, so he's partly right, but it would be impossible to fix the drains and keep the tree. So I have to sort of accept that the officer seems to have made a correct judgment from what he told me.
Okay. Bronwyn.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was just going to reiterate the fact that it does say quite clearly on the top of the report that you can contact the department if you have got any questions, and that's always there. That's the standard on this report. So. Okay.
I think Councillor Franks has accepted that.
Thank you for mind reading, but unfortunately, amongst your many talents, mind reading is not one of them. I'm not satisfied, but I don't think I'm going to get any further tonight. So thank you for your forbearance.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on tree? Oh, turn your mic on, Maureen.
Around this slightly, this issue, I'm concerned at the moment, and I think it's relevant at this point, that we still seem to be getting planted forest trees. There are quite a lot of young forest trees that have recently been planted to replace ones that were there before, and I think that's mad, and I don't think we should be doing it.
Okay, forest trees. Make that note of that, Marcus.
I know it's not for this.
It's not, no. Yeah. Thanks for that, Maureen. Can we move on to 8.2? This is a report of the Head of Regeneration Planning. This is Trees General to confirm a tree preservation order 7/2015 for trees on land west of 10 to 14 Closlanfair, Wenvo. Marcus.
Thank you. Yes, Chair. This the report sets out clearly which the tree is to be protected by the preservation order. It runs through an assessment, including the objection that has been received from the landowner in respect of the proposal to confirm the tree preservation order. Your officers have considered that and have looked at the tree in association with the relevant legislation and the guidance, which is the tempo assessment, and considered that the tree preservation order should be confirmed.
Okay, I don't know whether the local member wants to say anything. No? Happy with it? Okay. Members, are we going to agree to this tree preservation order? Can I have a mover and a seconder?
I move.
You move. Second by Councillor Bob Penrose. All in favour?
Yeah.
Aye. Any dissenters? No. That's clearly carried. Thank you for that. So we've gone through the trees enforcement action. The year-end report, Marcus, on page 34. Would you like to say anything about that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is just an update report, just to spell out all the various actions that have been taken by the enforcement team throughout the year and try to update you in terms of where we are with each of those cases. If you've got any specific questions, I'm happy to try and deal with them now, but obviously if they are detailed, then they can be directed to the enforcement team directly. It also details at the end some of the work or the work level that has been undertaken by the team throughout the year. There were 389 enforcement cases, 243 of which were public complaints, 73 proactive investigations, 29 internal investigations, and then the 14 community councillor complaints and 30 councillor complaints, adding up to the 389. You also notice on page 39 the number of notices that were served throughout the year, and we've also got the previous 3 years included, and you'll see it in broad terms there isn't a huge difference in terms of the notices served. One interesting note is that we have actually served a temporary stop notice. This was a relatively new bit of legislation, and that has been served on a property. And the other point of note is that we've now served 5 enforcement warning notices, which again form part of the new legislation and the new Planning Act. So, just for information for members.
Okay, moving out. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the little 2, land and buildings at Stable Cottage, Pan Main, Livery Yard, Treguff, St Mary Church, which is found on page 41. I think there's some enforcement action with this, but I'll ask the officer to lead us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this relates to an existing, well, it was a stabling business, and that slightly diversified, and they had planning permission some time ago for a business drying horse blankets as well as the livery. They then diversified without planning permission into a business which was basically producing logs for people to burn in their houses, log burners, firewood. Unfortunately, because this is a relatively small unit or holding, and because all of the trees and wood which they use in the production of firewood come from off the site and are not part of the holding, that is considered to be an industrial operation requiring the benefit of planning permission. They did apply for planning permission, and we had some objections from our highways colleagues and others, and we did consider that the business use in that location was not appropriate, and it was refused. We continue to receive complaints that the use was ongoing, and now we are seeking authorisation for enforcement action to cease the use. The reasons for the recommendation are there, but you'll notice on page 54 it requires the cessation of the use of the site for purposes of operating a commercial processing, storage and distribution of firewood logs, and the removal of a biomass boiler used essentially in drying those firewood logs.
Okay. Any member want to discuss anything with the officer before I move this recommendation? No? Okay. Well, the head of legal services be authorised to serve an enforcement notice under section 172 of the Town and Country Planning Act as amended to require the cessation of the use of the site for the purposes of operating a commercial processing, storage and distribution of firewood logs for business, the removal of the biomass boiler, accumulator tank, all associated equipment, all equipment and machinery used in the operation of the commercial processing, storage and distribution of firewood logs for the business, and in the event of non-compliance with this notice, authorisation is also sought to take such legal proceedings as may be required. That's what we're voting on. All those... You moving it, Margaret. Have we got a seconder? Seconded by Nick Hodges. All those in favour, please show. That is I don't see Audrey. No? Okay, you're not in favour. Thank you. Audrey, are you against the proposal or are you abstaining? What I'm against is about the horse. We've moved the thing. You can't speak on it now, Maureen. You were offered that opportunity.
Not Maureen, that's Audrey.
Audrey, rather. Can you just tell me which way you're voting so we can record it? You're against. Thank you. Okay. We're on to 10 on the agenda, which is the planning applications for real. The first one on the application list is Unit 6, Tiverlin Industrial Estate. It is subject to late representations. It can be found on page 70. I've been asked by the local member for a site visit, and that's what I'm going to ask for from the chair. Are members happy for a site visit?
Yes. Yeah.
If we're all here.
But, yeah.
It could be by a different committee. So, yeah, okay then. So it's deferred for a site visit. For those people who've come for the Aldi application then, it's not going to be heard tonight. Members have asked for a site visit, so you can step down and go home for an early bath. Thank you. Okay. The next one was subject to a site visit today. It was to Meadowlands Estate, Drope Road, the Drope. This is to take inert materials from the site and deposit it in Barry Docks. for recycling or making of cement, but I'll ask the officer to lead us through the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, in terms of the site, as you can see from the plan in front of you, it's located adjacent to the A4232 and very close to the administrative boundary with Cardiff. The site itself extends to approximately 1.8 hectares, predominantly rough grazing land. The site contains an artificial mound which is formed by the tip material. The aerial photo in front shows how the site's made up in relationship to the drope. As the Chairman just said, the material itself is effectively from the construction of the link road in the early 80s. Principally, it's ballast from the old railway line, I think, plus demolished stone from the viaduct. So, quite simply, this application seeks to remove that stone from the site. In doing that, the topsoil will be removed, scraped back, and that will be stored on site. The stone will then be removed by HGV vehicles and taken down to a site, Barry Docks, for onward processing or selling on. In terms of the critical issue, in terms of this application, really the vehicle movements, the application is made to remove material over a period of 3 years, of which there'll be 10 to 15 HGV trips per day from the site to Barry Docks. The applicants have specified, and there's a planning condition attached, which sets out the operating hours within the site, which is 8 o'clock to 4:30 Monday to Fridays and 8 to 1 o'clock on Saturdays. In addition to that, there's another limitation that during school term there will be no HGV movements to and from the site between 8:30 and 9:30 in the morning and 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the evening. The proposals do include alterations and improvements to existing site access, improving visibility displays, increasing the width of the unmade lane. Following the removal of the material, the site is going to be landscape reprofiled. There's an indicative scheme of landscaping in with tree planting, supplementary hedgerow planting, and very briefly, the sections show that the levels will go back down to what were pre-development or pre-tipped materials before the works in the early 80s. So, from a planning point of view, the use of secondary aggregates is supported in both national and local planning policies, as opposed to extracting stone straight from the ground. More so, the site is in a special landscape area, and removing the bund to reprofile the ground again is considered to be appropriate. There are, members have probably looked at there are a number of conditions attached to this consent, albeit it's a temporary consent for 3 years for the removal. One thing that we have added is on condition 7. The assessment is really made based on 10 to 15 HGV movements per day. We've actually we'll be looking to amend that condition 7 to add in a reference to no more than 10 to 15 vehicles, HGV vehicles per day. That's just to ensure that particularly the potential conflict with the school, that wouldn't arise based on that limited number of vehicles and the distance they'd have to travel to Barry. I believe the contractor or the applicant will be using 2 vehicles, so that limitation should prevent that sort of incompatibility issue. So from the officer's point of view, we are supporting the application.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Before I ask members to speak on it, could I ask members in the public gallery not to talk whilst this debate's going on, because it's very difficult for us to hear properly what's being said by the officer. We need to concentrate what's being said, so I'd ask for some forbearance. If you do want to talk, can you just slip outside for a few minutes? Okay. I've got Nick Hodges first to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. You might have thought I'd be talking about the juggernauts coming to Barry Docks with all the other juggernauts that will be coming to Barry Docks possibly soon. My actual question, though, is seeing this waste material has been stored at the Meadowlands estate since 1983, which is 34 years, and now it's going to be moved to Barry Docks, where it will be stored pending sorting, grading and onward sale. How long will we allow it to stay at Barry Docks? Because there's no condition or control over it as far as I can see in the document.
Do you want to answer that, or do you want
no, I'll
take other questions?
Come back on that. I mean, yeah, the application just clearly says it's going to be taken to Barry Docks. I mean, certainly any application, if it's, for example, they're looking to create a concrete batching plant, that will be subject to a further application. I mean, there was some discussion this morning with the applicant, although not formally. They are looking to put in an application to establish a site at Barry Docks. But this application is not considering that. It is merely considering the removal of the material from the site.
You wanted to come back?
Just coming back very quickly. So, in this case, we're getting the rubbish, but not the means to process it. And with the incinerator, we're getting the incinerator, but we don't know where the fuel's coming from. I just wish we had a bit of consistency, Chairman.
Yeah.
Clearly, this isn't rubbish. This is deemed to be a product, which is why they are taking it back out of the ground. Otherwise, it would just be left there. This has a financial value. It will be sorted and it will be sold on as aggregate, probably undercutting the quarries, but almost certainly from a better source than quarrying this out of the ground. So it may well be that the actual processing takes place in Barry Docks because there is an intrinsic consent in Barry Docks because it's a docks for this operation to take place. But you can rest assured they wouldn't be taking it out of the ground and processing it if there was no economic value to that product at the end of the day, and that's what we have to assume.
Okay, Councillor Franks.
I'm beginning to understand a little bit more now, because I was under the impression that the operation at Barry Dock to sift this type of material had been removed from the dock some time ago. But from what I understand, the actual end destination and plant has not been identified and specified. That's how I'm interpreting. Now, you see, I'm concerned because we do have, when the operation moved from Barry Dock, there's talk that it moved to Penny Turnpike area, and there seems to be a relevant consensus, so we're told, but I don't think this actually does this insist that it goes to Barry Dock. It doesn't, does it? No. So we're talking about Barry Dock, but it could be anywhere. Now, if it's going to head along Penny Turnpike, which is possibly one of the narrowest, busiest roads in the Vale, well, that is going to be a serious problem. A serious problem. So to a certain extent, I'm sorry to say, this planning application, the detail, has slightly misled me, because I was thinking Barry Docks, but now, and we know the problems already at Barry Docks. My colleague has mentioned them, but it could in fact be more than Barry Docks. So is this premature now, this application?
No, I mean the application is for the removal of the material for use as aggregate. Full stop. That's what this application is for. They have indicated it would be processed in Barry Docks. If they wish to process it anywhere else, if that has already got a consent for processing, there's nothing in this council we could do about it anyway. However, if they wish to use this aggregate as it comes out of the ground, you've heard Steve mentioning a large proportion of it is ballast, which means that it could be used with very little work. So they could take this off site and use it on building sites without processing. That again would not be a matter for this council. So the fact is that this is an application for the removal of the material from here. They have given information about where they intend taking it to sort it. They have given information about how many vehicles there will be. That being said, we have controlled the number of vehicle movements. We have controlled the noise that is likely to come off this use given the possible effects on nearby residents. In respect of any ongoing site for location, that wouldn't be a matter for this application. If they go to a site that doesn't have consent, we'd have to pick that up and deal with it again. They have indicated it's going to Barry Docks. Barry Docks wouldn't require consent for them to carry out the operation they're talking about. So really, we can only consider that.
Okay.
Well, I must say I'm very uneasy about this, because we're talking about huge lorries, and let's be fair now, the whole burden of this report is that it was definitely going one location, and now with discussion it's blindingly obvious that that is not the case, and that we do not have any control of where it goes. And I give one example, but there could well be other areas of interest, and this worries me, Chair, and I don't see how today we could, with a clear conscience, agree to this without a lot more information.
Okay, that's one. I've got Jonathan Bird next.
Thank you, Chair. My biggest concern is the lorries on the road. I'm glad that we've conditioned it, because it does pass a school and various other Culverhouse Cross and along a very busy road network. But can you reassure me that things like wheel washes and dust suppression are conditioned? And just thinking about Chris's issues, could we not put a condition in there that their haul routes have to be run past the council if any changes to other than Barry?
You have to turn your
condition 7. Oh, well,
it's in condition. So I've read it already. Yeah.
They will have to consult us if they change from Barry Dock.
Yes.
So that might give Chris a reassurance.
Yeah. Well, it's in condition 7, Chris. So it's. I know you read the reports thoroughly. Right. Who have I got next? Howard Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. No, you've answered my question. You've answered Councillor Bird's question. I am very concerned that any route that they take has to be approved by the council, because in my area I deal with complaints about lorries going through shopping areas, residential areas. I have 2 or 3 a week, so I'd be grateful that that particular restriction is applied strictly.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor John Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the number of lorry movements, and it's that word movements that needs clarifying. Is it 10 to 15 return journeys, or in other words, be 20 to 30 sort of passers of the roads, or is it 10 to 15 single kind of journeys?
The intention is to limit it to 15 movements per se, so not one, not 30, 15 movements in and out. In and out. That's the maximum they've indicated. So, well, funnily enough, you may not have to have a leaving number, because you could park a vehicle. You can park it because it will be limited to HGVs. It won't limit smaller vehicles. So you could, in fact, park a lorry on there at the end of the day and come back to it the next day to take it away. So this is the figure they've given us, and our highways colleagues have said is acceptable. So we will limit it to that. Okay.
Councillor Gwyn Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief point to reassure Councillor Franks. If it's going to Barry Dock or anywhere else, at the moment this application is to remove it, and there's a route there. If any vehicle is going to do it to Penny Turnpike, they'd have to use Leckwith Bridge, which has a weight limit, so they're not going to be using Penny Turnpike Road anyway.
Right. Okay. Any other member? Okay. Are we going to move this? Anybody want to move it? You're going to move refusal. Oh, that's. And have you got a seconder?
Yeah,
Val Hartree. Okay, then it's been moved and seconded that we refuse the application. Those in favour of refusal, please show. 3. Thank you. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation for approval, please show. apart from the 3 who've refused it, it's unanimous.
No, it isn't. No,
Oh.
there's 3 abstaining.
I thought you had your hands up.
No, there's 3. No.
Jeff, did you abstain?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan abstain and Maureen abstain. There we are. We've got 3 abstentions as well.
It's carried.
But it's carried, yes. Okay, then. Well, very interesting site visit back in the Wenvo area again this morning. Always a pleasure to go there. On page 141, we've got Cotterell Lodge at St Nicholas, and Andrew is going to leave. This is the full application on page 141, and then I'll move the next application on page 155. So, this was subject to a site visit, and I'll ask the officer to go through the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just for point of clarification, the description will relate to both the full application and the LBC application, as they both entail the same works. In terms of the site, so Cotterell Lodge is quite a prominent building. It's a Grade 2 listed building located at the entrance to Cotterell Park Golf Club, close to the A48. I'm sure many of you have perhaps seen it driving past. In terms of the site itself, it's Grade 2 listed. So the application seeks to demolish. There's 2 outbuildings to the side of the lodge, which are later 19th century buildings. So they are listed by being curtilage structures. So it's a demolition of those buildings, and the proposal is to provide a contemporary extension to the dwelling, really to provide more usable. Those that went to the site visit this morning noted how limited the property was internally, very, very small. So this is to provide 2 bedrooms and I believe two bathrooms. There's a glazed link that will provide the link from the main stone element to the extension. That's all going to be in glass with a very fine detail, the way it links into the existing house. Again, it's very, very simple. It's a contemporary extension, but I think that generally the view is that certainly with the glazed link, there's a clear separation, so there's a distinction between the old and the new. In terms of the conservation status, that's generally the approach that is sought. There's a clear separation between the 2, and officers are recommending that both the full and the LBC application are approved. You'll note there's a number of conditions that relate to the treatment, to the how the wall will the break into wall into the existing building. One thing just to mention is the original application proposed some alterations to the existing internal staircase. The officer wasn't happy with that, so that element's now been removed. So the only alteration to the lodge building itself is the creation of the access, which is a metre walkway into the extension. So there are a number of conditions that seek further details of materials and finishes and design details as well. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm just finding out, I think Ms Bagnall wants to speak against it. Are you speaking on this one or the listed building consent on the next one? So, do you want to speak now? Okay then, I thought that might be the case. Thank you. Yes, if you would, please. Okay. Yeah, you have got 3 minutes, but you can speak when you are ready, and we'll start the clock.
Okay.
And afterwards, any points of clarification that members wish to ask you, we'll ask after you've finished. Okay.
Okay, lovely.
Right.
All
Thank
right.
you. When you're ready.
Thank you. If I introduce myself, my name's Alex Bagnall. I lived at the Cotterell Lodge for 14 years, between 1994 and 2008 with my family. I've come to represent the whole community and local people who know and have loved the house for many years. There have been over 50 formal objections to the planning proposal, including the Georgian Society, the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings, and from the Royal Commission on Ancient and Historical Monuments. It is an iconic and much loved recognised landmark within the Vale of Glamorgan. It's a Grade 2 listed building, and it's listed because of its unique and original features, and is listed also as one of the treasures of the Vale of Glamorgan. It was originally a squatter's cottage. It's 300 years old and is built in stone and rubble, and it's got thick walls and no foundations. The current proposal suggests breaking through a structural wall which may lead to the collapse of the entire building. In the late 1800s, an unusual rounded porch was added to the lodge when the Mackintosh family lived at Cotterell House, as having a lodge had become a popular thing amongst the Victorians. The builder, or perhaps Mr. Mackintosh himself, chose to copy the style of William Burgess, who is famous for his work in Cardiff Castle and Castell Coch, providing important links with history and the architecture of South Wales. Donald, the family piper, used to live at Cotterell Lodge and used to play bagpipes in the morning and evening for the family, and Cotterell House, which was the lodge to the house, was demolished by the current landowners in the 1970s. The current landowner wishes to add a modern flat-roofed extension to the lodge in order to provide accommodation for staff at the golf course. There are other more suitable buildings out of sight on the golf course which could be developed and which are not Grade 2 listed or prominent, which could be adapted to provide staff accommodation. When we lived at the lodge, passers-by and tourists often stopped to photograph it and to ask about its history. We had visits from Americans and Australians, as well as film crews and weddings. One Australian was astounded that we lived in a building that was older than anything they had in Australian architectural history. We directed many visitors to St Fagan's Folk Museum to visit other interesting and traditional but often younger Welsh buildings than the lodge. The current landowners should feel privileged to be custodians of such an ancient and historic building. It is beautiful and totally unique to South Wales and much loved by the local community. They should regard themselves as custodians who have been given the opportunity to preserve the lodge for future generations and history hunters. If they are unwilling to take on this role, then it is our duty, the people of the local community within this room, to protect it instead. What a loss to future generations if this building is modernised. Many villages in the Vale are changing. It is vital that we preserve the history that is left. If planning permission is granted, it will benefit only one person, and if planning permission is refused, it will benefit the whole community and future generations.
Very well. You did have a bit more time left, don't you? You finished. That was pretty good timing.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Before I ask the officers to come back, first of all, is there any member who would like to ask Ms Bagnall any questions? Chris Franks, points of clarification, Chris.
Yes. I must admit I hadn't realised this historical architectural importance of this. You've said it's very old. Can you elaborate on its history and what the impact that this extension would have?
No. On again. It's 300 years old. It was built probably the end of the 1700s. It was built as a squatter's cottage initially, and there was a group of them. And then when the A48 was widened, the rest of the cottages were demolished. There was also a standing stone because it was quite a prominent crossroads in history where it's standing. The rounded end was added, which is was linked to the William Burgess work that was done in Cardiff at the time.
The legal officers, they're saying that this is really inappropriate because we're not getting factual information about this planning application. We're going back in the history of the cottage. What's the relevance?
Okay, I understand that, although it was fascinating. But my bottom line point for clarification is how do you think that this is going to adversely impact on the on this structure?
Yeah, it's like asking her a question, what she thinks, and it's all outlined in the report, isn't it?
Well, why do we have people come to speak to us then if there's constant interruptions and constant attempts to frustrate debate?
Because the developer hasn't got the opportunity of giving their point of view about it, Chris. And to make it fair, we ask points of clarification of what she said. And now she's made those points quite clearly. I understand what she's saying, and I just think your points of clarification are just unnecessary, and so do the officers. Okay? Councillor Drysdale.
This is a point of clarification, Chair.
Yeah.
You mentioned the risk of breaking through the wall, creating a doorway, the risk of the building falling down. Is that an engineering opinion? Where does that come from?
It's not an engineering opinion, but I lived there for while rats had got into the roof, and we are aware. It is on. We're aware of the structure of the building from having lived there, so we knew that there was rubble between the solid walls. So we imagine that when the walls are removed, the rubble will start to move. So it's quite a fragile building. It looks like a solid little thing, but it is quite fragile. And there are no foundations. There were no foundations 300 years ago, so we don't really know what effect knocking a huge doorway through one wall will have on the structure of the building.
Okay. Any other member? Clarification, Councillor Anthony Powell.
Thank you, Chair. I just need the clarification that when Councillor Franks asked the Speaker for some information and perhaps an opinion, I think that you said that that wouldn't be fair because the applicant hasn't got the right to put their side.
No.
Is that actually correct, or could have the applicant, as the Speaker, have attended this evening to give their side?
Yeah, and they're not here, are they?
So is that
I'm
does
trying
that
to
mean
get
that
a balance,
the Speaker, therefore,
Anthony. I'm trying to get a balance from the chair. I don't think it's right that you ask. It doesn't say that in the standing orders. It says to ask for points of clarification. That was a direct question, so I've ruled it out of order. So that's the end of it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other member?
Clarification.
Clarification, Maureen Kelly-Owen?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I know a lot of us in this room will feel quite emotional about those cottages because they're part of the history of the area. But I think, to be fair, we must find uses for old buildings.
Correct.
I do believe that quite strongly, and I think the way this has been done would have had CADU's approval because they have made it quite clear which is the new work and which is the old. So I would not find a problem with it.
Thank you, Maureen. Well, you're not here to answer questions, sorry. Right, that's Maureen's opinion, by the way, so maybe not other members. We're going to debate it when the you can come and sit back down now. Okay, and the officer can come back on any points of order that you've made or statements that you've made, and then the members have the opportunity to debate it now. This is the proper debate, okay? Marcus.
I'd just like to point a couple of key issues out. I think it was mentioned by the Speaker that the Georgian Group and the Society for Protection of Ancient Buildings had raised objections, and indeed our own conservation officer did with the original scheme, because there were considerable works internally to the cottage which would have significantly affected its character, and those have now been dropped. The internal part of the cottage is not affected. The only change is the proposed new doorway. So those comments, while noted, we haven't received new comments about the amendments, but to be honest with those groups, we rarely do when amendments are received. They make their comments as a statement about what they feel is important, and they expect councils to look at them. CADU haven't objected to this scheme, and as a point of note, there is the creation of a new doorway in the side of the cottage, but the reality is this is no different to the creation of doorways in barn conversions and other older properties which we're used to. So it will be important that there is obviously the building is protected while that happens. Very, very important. But that will be a matter for constructional details through the building regulations and what have you when that happens.
Okay, Councillor John Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry, John. I did take John Bird for Jonathan Bird. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, we'll
Thank
take
you,
the
Chair.
local one.
I called for this to come to committee because initially I had grave concern. I do believe our conservation officer and planning officer, as he is, has done a grand job and has negotiated a fine scheme for this building. I called for the site visit because I thought it would be helpful for people to see the house and how small and tiny it is, and it's been uninhabited for quite some time. In today's standards, I would actually call it uninhabitable, and I think those who visited the site today would probably agree with me. unless we allow a scheme like this, which in my eyes and our conservation officer's eyes does not cause any detriment to the building, all the stone facades along the A48 are to remain. In fact, the only change is one hole through. The stone staircase are remaining now. So I'm firmly very happy with this application now, and I think unless we allow something like this to happen, the cottage will fall into disrepair, which it is doing now. It needs something doing to it. If you leave a property empty, it becomes damp, and the walls then, rubble walls, as soon as they become damp, become unstable. So I will firmly be supporting this application, and I will move officer's recommendation.
Seconded.
I'd be happy.
I'll take Jeff because he beat you to it, Maureen. You're a bit slow off the mark. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Maureen. Right. I'm going to come to John Drysdale because I know he was itching to speak.
Thank you.
Who attended the site visit, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Bird has covered largely the points that I was going to make. I was concerned about this as well. One of the reasons I went to the site visit this morning. But the outbuildings at the back are derelict, or as near as damn it, and removing them would be an improvement. And as Councillor Bird noted, the main building itself is not in great condition. I noted one quite large crack in it. And as Councillor Kelly-Owen said, unless we are able to secure an ongoing use and maintenance, we're going to lose these buildings, and it really isn't going to be very attractive to live in, given its lack of facilities and its small scale. So I think having the extension will help secure the future of this building. I can understand the concerns, but as Marcus said, I'm sure our engineers are quite used to putting doorways into rubble buildings, and clearly they would not want to do that if there really was a risk of the whole building being damaged. So yeah, having seen it, I think it will be an improvement to what's there now.
Okay, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask how long it's actually been empty for, but I think at least 3 years. Yeah.
Sorry, no.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't think it says in the report how long it's been empty, does it? No. Okay, Councillor Nick Hodges, and then I'll come to Bob Penrose, and then I'll come to Audrey Preston.
So, thank you, Chairman. We're told in the report that it's a Grade 2 listed building, yet we keep hearing comments that if something doesn't happen to it, it'll rot. Well, I'm sure that this council would ensure that the owners don't let Grade 2 listed buildings rot. Or perhaps we will. Can I actually talk about the actual design? Because that's, I think, an intrinsic part of this application. I do understand that older buildings that perhaps need a revamp or a new lease of life or a change of use have modern extensions put on them, and that I understand the pastiche argument that an attempt at copying something never works and never works properly. The example I always like to quote, and I think this council is happy to quote, is the Barry Town Hall with the library extension. If there had been an attempt to try and copy the existing building, it would have never have worked, whereas I think the extension is well in keeping and is an attractive addition. However, this is horrible. That's an opinion. It looks like a pillbox to me. It looks like a gun slit coming out of it. This is really unattractive, and I think it is not an attractive addition to a very interesting and strangely and interestingly shaped building. So I understand that we're not always allowed to talk about design, although many of us do, but I think it is something we need to take into mind when we're talking about especially Grade 2 or even higher listed buildings and their future potential uses. The other thing is that this building is so prominent along a main road in our county. And I am concerned that the beauty of it and its positioning and the look of it basically is going to be impaired. So I am concerned. I would welcome, I suspect, a much nicer, more interesting, more sympathetic scheme, but I have to say it's either a pillbox or it looks like some public toilets that have been tacked on. I can't support it, Chairman. I just don't like it at all.
Okay, can I just remind members...
If you're asking me why I object, it's an unrealistic adaptation of a Grade 2 listed building.
That's the beauty of going out on site visits, because what you've just said, that you can see
I know the
from
building,
the main
Chairman.
road,
No, I
you
know the
can't, you
I know the
can't
building,
see
Chairman,
from the main
and I'm
road.
not going to see this extension
well,
because it's not been built.
You've had your say. Let me have
Right.
my say now, thank
Very
you.
good.
From the chair.
Yeah.
You would have seen this morning on a site visit, we discussed about where it would be seen. It's a flat roof building below the eave level of the existing building. You cannot see the existing buildings that are there now from the main road. You will possibly get glimpses of it as you come down the driveway, if you drive into the club, and possibly come down the hill during the winter time. You probably may get glimpses of the flat-roofed extension. But believe you me, from other angles, we looked at it this morning, you will not see it. And those members who were there will probably back me up. In fact, I'll ask the officer to tell you. And it is always in the eye of the beholder, a building. You don't like it, many other people do. It's a good way of joining a building onto another building which is Grade 2 listed, and I believe that that is the correct design, and it's a good design. Now, I've had this argument with Chris Franks and Val Artery over houses in Dinnis Powys where they didn't like particular design. It goes away and gets a Building Design Award. So don't say that it's horrible. They are good houses and they win awards.
Building Design Awards, I've said it in this planning committee before, are awarded by architects.
Yes.
Yes, who actually design the things in the first place.
Yes.
So it's a bit incestuous, Chairman.
Right, okay then. Well, they won Building Design Awards, and I'm very happy they did so. And no doubt they'll tell you they are nice buildings. Okay, would the officer like to come back? Yeah. Can the officer come back on the point that this building can be seen from different angles off the main road?
Clearly, the architect who's designed this has done so, and indeed done so in conjunction with the comments of the conservation officer, to minimise its visibility from the main viewpoints, including the A48. It has been deliberately designed to be extremely low-key. In some respects, like a wall to a walled garden. It is using natural stone, and there are conditions requiring that the way the stone is finished and completed will have to be submitted and agreed before they can do it. So it is deliberately designed to be very low key. You will, if you'd have been on site, seen the existing outhouse buildings, probably Victorian, maybe Edwardian, which have been built behind it. Those actually could be argued dominate what is the very attractive listed building in their own right, and clearly add nothing to it. And I think there are comments from the Royal Commission on Ancient and Historical Monuments who say that the outhouses proposed for demolition are not noted for having special architectural or historic interest. So it's clear that what's going back is much lower level, much lower key, and as I said earlier, the internal alterations which did cause us concern in terms of the property itself have now been dropped.
Okay. Thank you for that, officer. Councillor Bob Penrose.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to say, obviously, I have empathy with tonight's speaker, and I take aboard the points raised. However, I own Sheep Cottage, which is within half a mile of this, and is equal age, if not slightly older than this building. And I do take aboard Councillor viewpoint. These houses do need to be lived in. This one at the moment is not habitable. The outbuildings are ugly. They don't fit in at all with the original building. I developed Sheepcourt Cottage similarly in conjunction with planning permission, building regulations, and in fact we went through thicker walls than are on this cottage, and it will be done in conjunction with building regulations. I have a feeling that history is evolution as well, that you cannot mimic the older parts of the building. And if we did, Cardiff Castle wouldn't exist. You know, it's gone from Roman to Norman to... This is history. It moves on forward. But at the moment, we couldn't expect anybody to live in this cottage in the condition it's in, with the layout it's in, where the lounge, in fact, is one of the outbuildings. It's just, you know, to be honest with you, I think we'd be doing a favour to the building to grant planning permission, and I certainly support what Jonathan Burt has said tonight, and I do think we need to bring this building back into occupation and back into life. But I think the scheme is in keeping with, but it doesn't mimic the original building, and I don't think one can. It'd be false to do it, to build it with a straw or a thatch roof. This is probably the best compromise, and as far as that, in the absence of Councillor Parker, I should mention the levels, because as pointed out with the officer, the existing outbuildings are very, very high. This, in fact, would be dug into the bank, there'd be excavation, and the level of the roof of the extension would be lower than the eaves of the thatch roof, and as you rightly say, not visible. And I'm sorry, you know, I can't support the speaker's viewpoint, but that's my opinion for the benefit, and I was at the site meeting this morning, and for the benefit of the members.
Always helpful, yeah. Councillor Audrey Preston.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I have to differ from you on this, because I think the little lodge as it is very, very beautiful. I know it isn't perhaps, what shall I say, habitable as it now, but surely you could have done, something could have been done a little less drastic. You know, so to leave something of what it was or is. But to me, it'll be destroyed completely. You know, I just feel that, I mean, I've passed there for the last 50 years, and I've always loved it. I think it's lovely. But couldn't it just been a little bit more sympathetic then? It seems to me that it's sort of being obliterated and something more modern. I can't see people sort of slowing down to look at that, because it's
you can't see it.
No, but you know, that is my opinion.
Yeah,
Chairman.
that's your
valid. You know, I want it to be improved. I want it to be lived in, but I would have thought just a little less drastic action on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak? No, I think we've had a good debate on it, haven't we? I think it's been moved. Was it seconded by you, Val, of refusal?
Yeah, no,
refusal. No, it was refused. No. Did Nick Hodges move refusal?
Yeah.
You did. And Chris Franks seconded it.
Yeah, and it was moved officer's recommendation
by John.
And seconded by Jeff.
Yes, so I'm going to take the refusal first. So those in favour of refusal, please show. 3. Okay then. Those against the refusal and officer's recommendation, please show. Have you counted them all? Yeah. Yeah, obviously the refusal, yeah, we're having a vote now for removing officer's recommendation. Okay? Those in favour of officer's recommendation, please show. Okay, that's bar those 3 that voted against.
And we got 2
Who's abstained? Audrey. You abstained, thank you. Audrey didn't. Audrey voted against it. Thank you. So it's just Val Artrey and Chris Franks? Against, yeah. There was 3 against.
There was 3 against.
Okay, yeah.
It's carried.
It's carried then. I'm perfectly sure.
No.
Thank you. Well, I was just going to go on to the LBC now, the listed building consent. I don't know whether anybody wants to raise anything, or whether you want me just to get a recommendation. And seconded by Councillor Bird. All those in favour of the listed building consent, please show. Okay, Those against, please show. No. And abstentions. There we are. We've got 4 abstentions. Thank you. That's clearly carried then.
But Andrew's staying out, is he?
Yes. Yeah, he's staying out because of Tresillian Wood. Okay then, so on page 167, Tresillian Wood, I know that Councillor Eric Acker is going to ask the committee something. Before you do, Eric, can you turn off your mic? Thank you.
Just to mention, there are late representations in respect of comments from neighbours on this application. Just to...
Okay. Councillor Hacker.
And I agree with those people too. And I would ask for a deferment for a site visit on this, simply because some work has already been carried out there, and really,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you're going to, the officer here has declared and he may have to leave if you're going to carry on. I'm just going to ask you to move what you're going to ask.
Right, I am moving then.
Right. You want to move a site visit?
For a site visit.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Penrose. All happy with the site visit?
Yeah, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. That's another one out of the way.
Bring Andrew in.
Yeah, we can bring Andrew back in now. Yeah, you certainly do, but you'll have to turn up next month, unfortunately. Yeah, we'll let you know when the next meeting's going to be. Yeah. Thank you for your forbearance. Thank you. Oops.
Where's Jeff gone?
Yeah, where's Jeff gone?
Looking that way, I think. He's here. No, where's Bob's gone? He might have gone to the loo, but the thing is, if we start without him, he can't.
Yeah.
He can't.
He can't take part.
No.
Okay, then we're going on to the next application, which is on page 184. This is land to the rear, Pennymalts, Beach Road Junction, Horseshoe Inn, and Marcross. I know that this is like a garden extension and has come as shed. I think there's some legal thing we have to do at the end, but I'll let the officer lead us through the report and we'll see where it takes us.
Are we going to go without Barbara?
Yes, yeah, we can't hold up.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Okay. Well, this is an application submitted retrospectively for the change of use of an area of land to the east of a dwelling, to garden, the retention of a patio area and garden shed, and the relocation but retention of a chalet to the southwest boundary with the existing garden just south of the dwelling. For members' information, the actual dwelling was a barn conversion and approved in the 1990s following an appeal. It does have a residential curtilage which stretches alongside the road, but at some point in the past the owners have purchased additional land and have tried, without planning permission, to extend into that land, creating a patio area and a small shed, but also a chalet building. Your officers have looked at this application, consider the building to be extremely prominent in the countryside. I think we have some photos of it from the road and surrounding areas. You can see the shed and buildings very, very clearly. You can also see how much of an impact that actually has on the character of the existing stone now cottage, obviously barn conversion as was. We are recommending refusal of the application and a joint recommendation which also includes the authorisation of enforcement action to seek the removal of the, bear with me, in total, the cessation of the use of the land as garden area, the removal of the outbuildings and patio area, so that the land is returned to its former condition.
Okay, so I think there's two things on there that the officers are asking us to refuse it with this recommendation, a legal recommendation. I don't know whether anybody wants to debate anything, but otherwise I'll go straight into the recommendation. Yeah, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bird, move. And Bronwyn, okay, move that we refuse this application. Those show, please. Yeah, I'll come to that. Okay, thank you. Now the recommendation also that the planning permission for the change of use of land and retention of the outbuilding is refused. The head of legal services be authorised to serve an enforcement notice under section 172 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 is amended to require 1. The cessation of the use of the land as a garden, 2. The removal of the outbuildings and patio area, and 3. In the event of non-compliance with this notice, authorisation is also sought to take such legal proceedings as may be required. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, Dan, we're on to the last item on the agenda, I believe. This is a Reg 3 application, can be found on page 205. This is Cosmiston Medieval Village, which was subject to a site visit today. Are there any late reps, Marcus?
Yes, Chairman, there is one late rep from Councillor Garland from Surrey Community Council. The representation covers the same issues that were dealt with in the original letter and considered in the officer's report. In addition, there's a further condition from the officer in relation to a limitation to restrict any amplified music from the buildings. So this is a full application. It's a Regulation 3. It's Council's own application. It's for the change of use of the two obviously rebuilt medieval barns known as the Tithe Barn and Reeves Barn, and that's to allow for civil marriage proceedings. The supporting information indicates that although the barns will be licensed to hold ceremonies, only one civil marriage will take place at any one time. It's anticipated that the site will host approximately 10 civil ceremonies per year. The venue will be available for 7 days a week, but it's anticipated that the majority of the events will take place Fridays, between Friday and Sunday, between 9 AM and 5 PM, with none held on bank holidays. The organisation of the events will be managed by the Countryside Services staff. In terms of parking, obviously members that were subject to site visit this morning, there's a very, very large car park, the main car park. In addition, there is an overflow car park, which is on the plan in front of you, which is the later grass and gravel. And part of the scheme includes improvements to the vehicle entrance located not directly next to the medieval village, but the one that's Marcus is pointing out on the plan. That is an existing entrance. Nevertheless, some proposals are made to widen it to 5 metres and also 10 metres into the site to be constructed in bound material. In addition to that, the visibility displays are to be improved to achieve 2.4 by 120 metre visibility display along Lavenot Road. In terms of the parking, again, the overall parking capacity has been estimated being about 700 spaces. Obviously, that's the existing Cosmiston Park and any event parking as well. Briefly, in terms of from the highways, obviously they've looked at this. There have been a number of sort of discussions with the highway engineers. Again, there's no objection. I think the key thing to say is that during bank holidays, which are likely to be the busiest time, there is a condition that actually prevents the events taking place on that day, so you won't have that conflict. Just to confirm again that under the planning legislation, if you want to call it that, you can use land for 28 days for temporary uses. So this application is really just for the use of the buildings for ceremonies themselves. Now, it's anticipated that there could be, for example, be a marquee or other activities on the adjoining land. That's not subject to this application because that can take place 28 times a year in any case. This application is just for the buildings. There's a further additional condition that we we're requesting to be added, which is really just that only ceremonies themselves can take place within the barns, rather than, for example, discos or so. Again, it's tying that use down as much as we can, with the remainder of those uses taking place outside of the building, and if it's outside, if it's within 28 days, outside of planning control. Thank you.
Okay, I know that we've got a speaker against. Is it Councillor Michael Garland? Yeah, would you like to come up and take your seat? Are you speaking? Yes. Yeah. Right, okay. And also? Yeah, okay, when come to this. When you're ready, you've got 3 minutes, and in your own time, carry on. Thank you.
The Vale of Glamorgan Council has listed Cosmeston Medieval Village as a county treasure, being a full-scale reconstruction restoration on the original 14th century site, and it forms a popular heritage attraction that is unique in Britain and is of historical, educational and recreational importance, not only to visitors from the UK but from overseas visitors as well. The medieval village has visitors 7 days a week, with a higher number of visitors at weekends and bank holiday periods, when, if this proposal is approved, the medieval village will be closed to visitors. The application states that events will not be held on bank holidays, but it further states that these events will be held on Saturdays of the bank holiday periods, again when high numbers visit the park. Closing the medieval village to hold events will deter visitors coming here, not knowing whether the medieval village will be open or not when they arrive. This will dramatically reduce visitor numbers, and the village will lose its intended use as a historical, educational, recreational visitor attraction. The Highways Department state that the access point of Lavernock Road is grossly substandard in terms of visibility along the adjacent highways, as it is located between 2 bends on Lavernock Road, and the resulting intensification of their use, plus the high traffic speed along Lavernock Road and poor street lighting at night, will be to the detriment of highway safety. Even cutting back of hedgerows each side of the access points will not overcome visibility issues sufficiently to allow a safe exit to drivers leaving the site. The proposed vehicle parking area at the medieval village is severely limited and weather dependent due to being soft ground, although there is a park gravel area. This has long become overgrown with grass and may be unsuitable for this use. The main car parking area has roughly parking spaces for roughly 210 vehicles, but this number is greatly reduced as individual car parking spaces are not indicated. Vehicles are larger, minibuses, camper vans, etc. take up more room when they park there. If the car parking by the medieval village is not used, then it is assumed that 50 parking spaces will be allocated for event guests in the main car park, greatly reducing the car parking by 25% on those days. Parking is already reduced here on many days by film crews taking up nearly 50% of the car park area, and of course the forthcoming 500 space bus park and ride scheme will put even more constraints on parking here. The overflow car parks are on soft ground areas and are located in a C2 flood zone alongside Sullybrook and cannot be used in inclement weather. On
Can you wrap up, please?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Have you got anything you want to just finish off with?
Yes, just on the May Day bank holiday and Sunday the 2nd of April, the overflow car parks couldn't be used, and obviously the visitors now come and park on the local estates. Okay. They cause severe traffic congestion throughout the estate. This may not only have a severe effect on regard to residents trying to access their homes, but may also be detrimental to the access of emergency vehicles.
Okay, thank you. I know Councillor Marnie wants to speak, so I'll... Oh, yes. Are there any points of clarification, please, that want to ask the speaker? No?
No.
Thank you. If you would like to come back and take your seat, Councillor Marnie. You've got 3 minutes when you start.
Okay, thank you very much. I think a lot of the points were covered there, Mike Garland. I don't think anybody really is objecting to anybody having a nice wedding in what they see to be nice surroundings. Although personally, the actual buildings themselves are extremely gloomy, but that's a matter of the choice of people booking weddings there. I do have huge concerns because there's been no explanation, as has been touched on, of people travelling from near and afar, turning up to see the medieval village and finding a wedding there. There doesn't seem to be any means of notifying people that there would be a wedding on. I would imagine the first 10 comments on TripAdvisor that we travelled all the way from Aberdare or wherever, Bristol, or even closer, and finding the thing is shut or they can't use all the buildings, would actually really detrimentally damage the reputation of the village and, of course, the income streams that we've managed to build back up after, of course, many of these services were removed by previous administrations, and this one, of course. So that can only harm, A, the income streams of the village, but B, the whole purpose of it. We've touched on car parking. I was there this Saturday, and I had to circle a car park, which was chock-a-block. The largest of the overflow car parks was chock-a-block, and I had to wait for somebody to pull out before we could park there. We've got, this administration have proposed, as has been said again, a 500-car park and ride with bus turning circles. Where's that's going to go? I've absolutely no idea. We have the noise aspect, of course. I know it's not amplified music. Amplified music has been ruled out, but of course, with a wedding reception and music, we know how raucous these things can get. I'm sure we've all been at many, many weddings. So if you take all these things together, I don't think it's a great idea. We've mentioned, I'm at a loss at this, we won't allow them to be held on bank holiday Mondays. Well, Saturdays and Sundays is where people off work can actually use the facilities there, as was evidenced this weekend. So, again, with the parking, and has been touched on, we already know when those car parks are full, people are parking at Blavernock Park Estate there, to the detriment of the residents. So I'm all for maximising profit here. I'm all for people seeing a nice venue that they would like, but I just can't see that how it's viable. And how can you possibly disappoint visitors when they want to visit the place? There's no means of alerting them, is there? So basically, that's the gist of what I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And within your 3 minutes, great. Right. It's the officers now to speak, and then we'll have a debate about... Oh, you wanted to speak as well, didn't you? And then you were going to leave. Yes, please. Okay, Councillor Liz Binek, the Cabinet Member, would like to speak, and then she's going to leave. In your own time. Yeah, I think so. 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this application. To clarify, the application is in relation purely to holding approximately 10 civil weddings per annum in 2 replica barns at Cosmiston Medieval Village, not to any sort of events or anything elsewhere. People in Wales can be married or hold events in a whole range of settings. Cadw, National Trust, National Museums and Galleries of Wales are all competing to host weddings, as are a range of country parks, nature reserves and wildlife trusts. The proposal was discussed within a report at Cabinet on the 11th of January 2016, and although it was not called in by any member at that time, it was also discussed at scrutiny on the 12th of April 2016 to ensure open communication of the proposals. Weddings in the barns were specifically mentioned at both meetings, but not a single objection was raised. It has also been the subject of press releases which have been specifically mentioned, or have specifically mentioned weddings, but again, there was not one objection received. Even today, there is not one objection from a member of the public. We have been completely open, even to the point of me inviting Councillor Garn to meet me at the cafe in Cosmeston on the 12th of August last year. We discussed a range of issues. Weddings in the replica barns was not one of them. I do question what has caused the change of view in the intervening period. I know that Councillor Penrose has previously suggested handing Cosmeston over to Centre Parks to establish one of their family resorts. I should clarify, we are categorically not talking that scale of venture or of limiting access. This is about finding ways to invest in the parks for the benefit of local people. I don't know how often Councillor Marnie visits the park now he lives in Barry Island, but I live just up the road, and I reckon that my family visits about 500 times a year. Images of the bitten otter and starling murmurations on council social media were actually taken by my family. In the recent public opinion survey discussed by Cabinet on the 20th of March 2017, just 13% of respondents were fully aware of the council's current budget situation, that our funding has been reduced by over £16 million, yes, in the past 5 years.
She's allowed to say what she wants.
That we have also had to make savings of over 30 million and still have another 24 million to find by 2020. However, once they were aware of their preferred option for addressing the budget shortfall was not to cut services, but to develop new services that would generate revenue. This is exactly what we are trying to do, to generate income to maintain and invest in our parks. And by the way, the same survey gave our country parks a 96% satisfaction survey. There have been a few concerns raised by local councillors. It might harm the tourism attraction. Well, I would question how many people attending weddings will come back with their family and friends afterwards. Pressure on car parking, etc. is all there. I would ask committee to approve the application. In doing so, give local people the opportunity to create happy memories of their special day at this much loved venue.
Okay, thank you. Before we take the committee out, the officer is entitled to come back on anything that's been said.
I've just had a thought. As I run a wedding business myself, should I declare an interest in this?
Well, it's up to you as the member, first of all, if you think there's a...
If you're going to book it.
Yeah.
I'm a competitor and may have a biased view.
Well, that's up to you.
Well, it's entirely a matter for you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So, the officer, would you like to come back? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Yeah.
Chair, Councillor Bird has just declared an interest because he has a wedding facility.
Yeah.
Two of us here are members of Penarth Town Council,
right,
which also has wedding facilities actually in the area. I didn't consider it to be a problem, but if that decision is made, then I'm afraid Councillor Birch and myself will have to declare an interest.
Yeah, I think it's up to the individual member. You know, you're looking at a planning application. I don't think that because Penarth Town Council run weddings that you're going to vote to stop this going ahead because Penarth Town Council run them. But that's up to you. Is that right?
Yeah. So we'd all have to leave. No, we'd all have to leave if we thought about it.
Yeah. Yeah. If the legal officer wants to come in and say something, but personally, I just think you're taking it a bit far. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just say, obviously, there's a very valid point. I don't know who said it, but clearly the council itself holds wedding venues. I think it was Councillor Hodges. There we are. And all councillors would therefore be precluded. So I can't see that would be the case.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'll carry on then, and just very quickly to deal with some of the issues that were raised. The buildings themselves, it was talked about in terms of the historic content of the buildings and character of the buildings. Please be aware these buildings are modern replicas of old buildings, so they are not and carry no historic listing or merit. Indeed, if obviously the council lost funding streams in respect to the country parks, it would have to consider whether it kept that village going and whether it would seek to remove the village from the site, because it does cost a considerable amount of money to run that facility. That being said, this proposal has been sought to strengthen the likelihood of that not happening and to ensure that the council can keep the village there and can fund the park going forward, because it will add to that particular attraction. Our highways colleagues have raised no concerns whatsoever with regard to parking and have raised no objections to the scheme, following initially having some concerns about the access. That is detailed in the report. There was mention of the park and ride facility, which is detailed in the LDP. That is a proposal which has absolutely no form or weight, because if an application comes in for that proposal, it will have to be considered in conjunction with what's been allowed on at this facility. There are no firm proposals for that. Members can't consider that at the moment. We've dealt with bank holidays because those will not be used. There was mention of overflow car parks and the fact that during very wet periods they become unusable. And it is relevant to note that at the moment, obviously, the funds that are available to the council and to the regeneration department to actually improve those facilities are extremely limited. As we seek to look to make or to create more income-generating activities in the various park locations, it may well be that we are able to improve those facilities. So while we do not consider them to be absolutely necessary for this consent, it is certainly the case that were income-generating activities to be allowed in the parks, that may well allow us to improve the facilities. Councillor Marnie raised the issue of how people would know whether their wedding's on. It is a very, very relevant issue. That would be on the council's website, and staff members would be the ones who'd be organising and helping with events, so they would be publicised by people who are visiting the park. And I think that was one other issue. Oh, and indeed noise was raised, and there are conditions dealing with noise. The facilities themselves are only for wedding ceremonies, and this consent is only for the wedding ceremony. You heard Steve mention the conditions proposed to say that only wedding ceremonies can be held in the barns, and that is the only thing we are considering now.
Okay. I've got a couple of speakers. I'm going to take Nick Hodges first and then Councillor John Drysdale.
What about the local member?
A local member comes first. Of course. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. First of all, and it's not part of this committee, but I would challenge the Cabinet member's statement that I suggested handing over to Centre Parks. I'm not going to elaborate, but it's a downright lie. The second thing on there is, as I believe, and perhaps the legal officer put me right on this one, but there's a quasi-judiciary committee. We are in no way influenced by Cabinet or scrutiny. So why that was included by the Cabinet member, I have no idea whatsoever. It's for this committee to bring up points and for members to vote on the planning application. I don't want to really go back over ground that's been covered very succinctly by Councillor Garland and Councillor Marnie. But there are a couple of things which I have a personal opinion on, and it reflects residents' opinion. First of all, the junction, despite the assurances given by Highway, and you can look at it on the plan on the screen, it's a very acute angle when you're coming from Sully towards Penarth. It means you're turning back virtually on a sort of a 60-degree angle. That necessitates slowing up. This is a road which, yes, it's a 40 limit, but most of the traffic on there don't adhere to it, unfortunately. And it's an accident waiting to happen. Equally, when one's coming from Penarth towards Sully, to turn in there necessitates crossing through the traffic coming in the opposite direction. This junction has been turned down previously when an application was for horse riding from the stables, which is directly opposite, to have it on a pathway past the medieval village. It was turned down by Highways as being unsafe. It seems we've now had a about turn on this issue. With regard to the car parking, it would be lovely if the overflow car parks were opened, but they don't know usually when they need the overspill car parks because they don't take into consideration the film crews. And what happens is, because the gates aren't open for the overflow car parks, even when they're not underwater, people are parking on estates. And I would challenge the Cabinet member, she obviously hasn't walked around Cosmiston and spoken to the actual residents there, because every person I have met, and it's a very good time to be walking about at the moment, has thrown this one at me and complained about the parking. The noise one, I think, has been circumnavigated now because we're told that up to 28 days of functions can be held in the events field without being part of this application. It was part of the original one. It's been taken out of this one now. Only thing I would say is that having weddings there facilitates the use of marquees with events in the events field, which would have no restriction on amplified noise. 10 weddings per annum. I'm not going to mention the business plan on this, but it was one I would personally look into because I can't see the income from that being meaningful with all the work that has to be done on junctions, etc. But how are they going to plan this 10? As you said, it's fine saying it could be on the council website, but most people who come from the West Country, who come from far away, don't really look. They expect it to be open. If we have published opening hours on the website, which we do, then people will be looking at those opening hours. And the other thing is, a lot of time and effort has gone into pulling the medieval village from a situation in 2012 where it was mothballed, the livestock was taken away, the chickens and all were taken away, and guided tours, costume guides, all this was taken away. And it was and very credible to the officers, a mammoth exercise in marketing to schools in the West Country and Wales to where it is today, where I believe the last published profits were around about £60,000. So it's great going from 60,000 loss to a 60,000 profit. And I just fear that by having these, and I've got nothing, as Councillor Marnie said, against people holding weddings there, but it's fitting it in with the run in the medieval village and to the detriment of the educational needs of this site. Thank you.
Okay, just to go back on what you said about the public, and you've had discussions with the public, I have to say, I have to question the number of people who've objected to this application. Not a single one. Apart from reading what I read on the blogger's website in Penarth, I haven't seen anybody come and complain about this application. So I think that needs to be borne in mind. But I'm going to ask
Could I just say that says, Chair, that it hasn't been substantiated in writing. That doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist, and you personally probably wouldn't be aware of it, you know.
Yeah, I've been aware of it, as many other people have. Like I said, I've seen it on other websites. The blogger in Penarth has had an extensive posting on there, as have been in the papers. It's been advertised a lot. You deferred this for a site visit. It was on the council website for last month. It's back here. During that month, I would have expected the public to come out in arms about this, but they haven't. So we'll ask Councillor Nick Hodges, then I've got John Drysdale, then Councillor Jeff James.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm trying to work out the best way to approach this, because if this was a supermarket, and we nearly had one tonight, then we would be told that we can't talk about business and competition and God knows what. But this is a plan by ourselves as a council, a Reg 3, for a piece of land that we own, run and use. Now, it's been brought up, the commercial aspects of it, by both the Cabinet Member and the Planning Officer, so I'd like some information about the running of these civil marriages and wedding events, and then perhaps something to do with the commercial aspects as well. Because if we're asking now for the planning permission, effectively a licence, or to have up to 10 ceremonies a year, there must be some sort of plan around it. Now, I realise, because it doesn't say in here, but I've just been told now, that the wedding event would go in one or perhaps both of the barns, depending perhaps on the size of it, how many people want to attend. But it would just be the ceremony only. Is that right? Right.
Correct.
Okay. And how long would the ceremony be allowed to happen?
About 30 minutes, I believe.
I went to a 3-hour one once.
That was a Roman Catholic
perhaps
church.
if you went to an Indian one, it'd be 3 days. But who knows? I only asked because the times are between 9 and 5. So I suspect someone, if they wanted, could have an 8-hour wedding. I don't know. Well, there you go. You never know. perhaps they could book it 3 times. There you go. What I'm interested in is the payoff, because it's our own application, and because the commercial aspects have been brought up. I'd like to go into the commercial aspects. I'm sure I'll be told off any minute now. For
You
bringing
will,
it up.
because
So-
that's nothing at all to do with the planning committee.
But it's been brought up by the cabinet member. It's been brought up by the planning officer.
She said it in a speech. You can say what you want in
Well,
your
I've
speech.
been told that this is necessary to keep the country park and the medieval village running.
Well, I'm going to ask the officer
to
to
make
come
it-
back on it, okay?
My response was in response to comments raised by...
Can you turn off your microphone?
My response was in response to comments made by the speakers or the speaker in relation to it. So commercial aspects are only relevant in as much as they are the background as to why this application has been made.
As with any planning application, for any business...
Turn your mic on.
So, this is the problem with dealing with Reg 3s, and also when you have the cabinet member who's a member of the planning committee, in my opinion. Now, I have to ask, in my opinion, this is a compromise between the possible amount of money being brought in to help the medieval village against the issues that it will cause, and also the, perhaps, as it's been said, disappointment to other visitors. So I have to take that into account, because this is our application and we are going to be responsible for it. Therefore, we need to be responsible for it. Now, I'd like to know more information about the organisation and the running of the civil marriages and wedding events, and the disruption that it will cause to the running of the medieval village and the Cosmiston Country Park. I need more information.
The information you have is in the report. If you want any more information, you can contact the Parks officer who'll deal with that, Sir Steve Pickering.
Okay. All right. The next questioner is Councillor John Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the key points that I'd like to ask the officer to clarify is this claim that the medieval village will be shut if there's a wedding on, because as I understand it, that is nothing like the case. One building will be in use within the medieval village and the whole of Cosmeston Park, and that anybody arriving from the West Country or wherever will find that the vast majority of the medieval village is open and available to them. So perhaps you can come back on that in a moment. If this was an application from a private business applicant, we would not be asking to look into the economics of it, the viability of it, the motivation, etc. It's a very simple question we've got here. Is this a suitable place to hold this kind of function? And it seems self-evident to me that it is. Clearly, there are issues locally about parking with the popularity of the village, but those are problems that exist now, and the word intensification of use was used, but actually the number of people arriving for 10 weddings a year against the very large number of people arriving to use Cosmiston Park, it's absolutely minimal. And finally, the point on the traffic. If the access is so substandard and unsafe now, or will even be when the visibility displays are increased, logically, as a council, we should be closing Cosmiston Park down and not allowing that access to be used. I think it's a red herring. We use it now. Okay, all right. My lack of understanding of where the access was then. But I'm sure if our highways officers have said that with the increased visibility displays, this will be a satisfactory access, then I think we accept that, as we usually do. There is absolutely no reason in planning terms why we should turn this down. It is a suitable place for this use to go on.
Okay, Councillor Jeff James.
Thank you, Chairman. To quote something that you often say, the benefit of a site visit is very, very useful. And having visited the site today and walked around and see the layout of the site and seen the number of people in that car park, which was in a morning, which wasn't a bank holiday or anything, it just brought to my mind just how busy Cosmoston is and how popular it is. I understand the need of the council to find ways to raise money to subsidise the ongoing use of the Cosmoston medieval village. But I have real concerns that this is going to change the very nature of Cosmoston medieval village. And in fact, I feel that this use is conflicted because it is bringing a degree of commercialisation into what people from all over, I understand tonight, from all over, who actually love this place because it is supposed to be a medieval village. Now, the people who get married here won't be in medieval costume. And equally, we talk about small groups just in one building, but we honestly don't know how large the wedding groups will be. If there's going to be a marquee, which will not need planning permission, quite clearly they anticipate that the wedding parties could be quite big. Now, that being the case, that even though, Councillor Drydale says, even though parties may actually still make the access of the site and that the wedding may not interfere with them, I suspect it will change their experience. And I think this is what's important. And I think the point made by the cabinet member comes from that side of the council, which relates to what the council wants to do. And I support Councillor Bob Penrose. Yeah, we're not here to consider what the council wants to do. We're here to consider what is the best for the planning application that's before us. So on that basis, Chairman, I'm actually going to be voting against this because I do feel that this is going to change the nature of Cosmoston medieval village, and it is going to impact adversely on the existing Cosmoston parks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, really a question for Marcus. They say that they're only going to be 10. Does that mean that if they go above 10, they would have to come back for a fresh application? And just to complete what I wanted to say, I'm a little bit concerned that the widening of the access, should it be approved, by 10 metres might not be sufficient. And understanding the way cars come in and out, if you've got a jam up with 4 cars because there are cars behind the 10-metre line, it would be very difficult to start to manoeuvre. So it might be worthwhile just considering rearranging the access requirement to improve it. Thank you.
Can I come back on a
Yes,
couple of the issues
please.
that were raised? Obviously, the issue in terms of the medieval village and whether it'll be open or not will largely depend on the booking and what the staff decide on the day when it comes down to the arrangements. If it's a small wedding, there's every likelihood that the village will be, the remaining parts of the village will still be open. However, if it's a larger wedding, there might be a requirement to close further parts of it. So that will be down to the operational running of the park at that time. Coming on to Councillor Parker's issue in terms of the access, obviously that's 10 metres going back from the road that hard surface will be created. That's what's been considered acceptable by Highways colleagues, and there is obviously the track beyond that isn't bound surface, it's a made-up surface, but you're still able to move on it. So obviously Highways colleagues have looked at this in some detail because you'll notice they originally had some concerns, and so they have now considered that part to be acceptable.
And they were on site today. I'll take you after the list of speakers. I've got Peter King next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad for Marcus's comments about the access, because I read and listened to the commentary and realised that there was enough room for at least 3 cars alongside each other, both in and out, and I thought that was probably enough. So I'm satisfied the highways adjustments may well be adequate. But I want to pick up on the point about driving to a facility and finding it closed. I once took family to Llandaff Cathedral and it was closed because there was a wedding. We went for a cup of tea. Then we came back and the wedding had finished.
Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that I'm not the only member here this evening that has taken holidays in other countries where you go into villages as a tourist for sightseeing, looking at the architecture, visiting the restaurants and maybe a pub or two. And there's been a wedding going on. And that wedding is spilling out into the village square and everybody is happy. Whether you're part of the wedding or not, it's a wonderful thing to see. And it brings pleasure and enjoyment not only to the couple who are pledging themselves to each other, but also to the many tourists that enjoy seeing the happiness. We've heard that this is going to change the whole nature of Cosmeston Park. I don't agree. This is 10 days a year. And it's not even necessarily going to be full days. We've also heard that this is a medieval village and the people who are getting married are not going to be in medieval costume. We don't know that. There's usually a reason why you book a particular venue, and if you're going to book a medieval tithe barn for your wedding, it may well be that the wedding will be themed, and that would enhance the tourists and the educational value of children visiting if there was actually a wedding going on. We've heard also that this is bringing a commercial venture into the park. Too late. We've already got a commercial venture going on in the park, and you could go in there and purchase things like sandwiches, coffee and cakes. So I think this is a perfectly acceptable use for a wonderful park in the wonderful Vale of Glamorgan. I think that it will only enhance tourists' experiences, and I'm going to move the officer's recommendation.
Seconded.
Thank you. I'll let Councillor Bob Penrose come back. I think we've had a good debate about it. From my point of view, I haven't had much to say about it, but commercialisation and ways of raising funds happens in every walk of life. Even in my school, because of the shortage of funds, we've had to look at innovative ways of bringing money in. And one of the ways is to let out rooms within the school. So it goes on throughout the council. So this is not unique just to the Cosmeston Village. So I'm going to support the officer's recommendation too, but over to Bob Penrose to finally wind it up.
I'd just like to move that we...
Yeah, sorry, can I take Maureen Kelly-Owen and then you can sum up, Bob? Yeah, we've forgotten about Maureen.
Yes, Chairman, I want to speak about this because I'm somewhat emotionally connected. I was the joint chairman of the original park before it was developed, before we knew how we had any medieval aspect. I represented South Glamorgan, and I can't remember who the chairman was, perhaps Margaret will. It was the Vale, wasn't it? It was the Vale and South Glamorgan developed it jointly.
Right.
And I'm pleased to say that I prevented the planning officer getting permission to put a building on the far side of the lake. I won't tell you who the planning officer was, but I fought that like mad. Unfortunately, he didn't get that permission. The reason I'm mentioning this, and I'm only giving you my credentials in the thing, because I am emotionally attached to the park. We were thrilled to bits when we were developing the car park originally to find there were some medieval remains That was such an exciting thing to find out. And I've been in love with that park ever since. I took my 3 children there when they were little. They all loved it. They still love it. I wouldn't do a thing to damage it. But I think Councillor Tony Powell has set it out beautifully, because it will help to bring, in my opinion, and his, it will help to bring the place alive. It can do nothing but enhance it, and for a very, very little inconvenience. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Maureen. And Councillor Penrose is going to sum up.
Well, it's only to say I want to move we go against officer's recommendation.
Okay, have you got a seconder? Councillor Val Hartree. Yes. Well, they did tell me that in their talks, and in fact, Councillor Jeff James said he was going to move, that he was going to vote against it. So I think, in fairness, we should accept if you want me to put the vote for the motion, I will do first.
Councillor James said he would vote against it. He didn't suggest he was going to make a resolution.
Okay.
The resolution has now been put to move the officer's recommendation. It's too late to put another resolution in.
Well,
We'll just go to
no.
that.
From the chair, I think we can accept that they want to move against officer's recommendation. I'm willing to accept that. Okay. Those in favour of refusal to this application, please show. That's 5. Okay. Those against that refusal, please show. The substantive motion now then is those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Okay, and those against? Thank you. That's clearly carried. Thank you for your forbearance.
Is Jonathan